Welcome to the Dolby Music Community Sessions. I'm Ben Guyvers with Dolby Laboratories on the Music Partnerships team based in Los Angeles. And in this month's session, I am thrilled to welcome back Dolby's Jordan Glasgow, Senior Manager of Content Creation, to share the exciting new updates to the Dolby Atmos Renderer in version 5.3 and the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler version 1.4. Jordan and his team have been hard at work as always, continuing to innovate and evolve the tool set to meet the needs of you in the creative community and industry. And this is a particularly exciting update for the renderer, as it includes, among other features, the public debut of Stereo Direct as an additional monitoring and re-render layout. So this monitoring output is created directly from the Atmos mix rather than down mixed via an additional layout, and can be exported as a re-render as a separate and its own deliverable. So that is really exciting. Jordan is going to get into that and share the other new features to the renderer, such as updates to the size, metadata rendering process, and the new transport slider. Yes, there is now a transport slider in the Dolby Atmos renderer, so stay tuned for that. Jordan will also share the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler version 1.4 and its new features, including edit modes such as slip, snap, and shuffle, and close project functions. Jordan will be joined, of course, by Greg Stryke, who is here as always from Miami, in conversation and with part 2 of his pro tips for the Album Assembler, this time taking you through ADM analysis for loudness, file location, and setting up a gapless album with fades. So be sure to add your questions along with your name here in big marker for Jordan and for Greg. We answer many of your questions via the text function in real time during the session, and also, of course, live at the end. So thank you all, as always, for the great questions and comments that we get. We really do appreciate it, and it is one of the main reasons that we do these sessions. So that's coming right up. And if you haven't yet, grab the updated Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.3 and Dolby Atmos Album Assembler version 1.4 from the Avid Store, where it can be purchased. And of course, 90-day trials and the installer are available on Dolby Customer. Zap the QR code on the screen now to opt into the Dolby Creators mailing list. That will keep you up to date on Dolby's tools releases, news and community sessions, events, and more. Scroll down to the bottom of the page there to enter your info, which will get you on the list. Also, a reminder to head over to dolby.com/institute to get into the free Dolby Atmos Music Essentials course, covering all the topics you need to get started creating music content, including renderer and DAW workflows, demo and exercise content. That course is available in 5 languages, and there are several great deep dive tutorial videos in both English and Spanish available. That's at dolby.com/institute. And shout out to the Institute team, as always, for their amazing work. From there, you can link to the Dolby Professional site, where you'll find a ton of great resources, such as quick start videos from Dolby's Bennett Schatz and his team, including a What's New in Album Assembler version 1.4 video, and links to the post-production and music knowledge base, the FAQs, and the user forums, where, of course, you can interact with other members of the community and Dolby's great support teams. And these are wonderful resources that are always evolving. There are What's New articles there for the latest Dolby tools releases. So Adam Bennett and his team do a great job supporting creators there. Huge shout out to them as well. All right, in last month's music community session, we had a really fantastic deep dive into mixing heavy rock music with engineers Brad Smalling and Athena Wilkinson of Evergroove Studio in Colorado. They went deep into their section mixing the band Periphery and shared their technique and theory around honoring creative intent and keeping that crucial punch and energy in the Dolby Atmos mix. It was a really great session, and thank you again to Brad and Athena for that great session. You can check that one out and all of the previous community sessions going back several years now, featuring mix and mastering engineers from around the world, at our community sessions page and at Dolby's YouTube channel, where all the sessions are archived in a dedicated playlist. So please check that out and like and subscribe there as well. Also in last month's session, Dolby's Emma Brooks shared an overview of the Women's Dolby Atmos Music Network, which is spearheaded by Dolby's Christine Thomas and is in full effect now. So if you're interested in learning more or becoming a member of that great group, check out that session. And if you haven't yet, please email musicrelations@dolby.com to get involved with that group. We would absolutely love to hear from you. All right, with that, let's jump into the updates to the Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.3 and Dolby Atmos Album Assembler version 1.4 with Jordan and Greg, and that'll be followed by Greg's Pro Mix Tips. Please add your questions with your name in the questions tab and enjoy. All right, it's my pleasure to welcome Dolby's Senior Manager of Content Creation, Jordan Glasgow, back to the community sessions. He's joined by my partner from Miami, Dolby's Director of Creative Enablement, Greg Stryke Chin. Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Ben. Glad to be here.
Always a pleasure, Ben. Great to see you.
Glad to have you guys. All right, Jordan, you and the team have been hard at work, as always, in the Dolby laboratories, building updates to the Atmos Music toolset for the community. And you've got some exciting new features to share here today for Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.3 and the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler version 1.4. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Really happy to take everybody through the new features. Let's kick it off with the renderer. So the first thing I'll show here is the new Stereo Direct monitoring and re-render mode. So this is a new method of deriving a stereo re-render from your Atmos master or from your mix. The other methods of deriving stereo all go through a 5.1 render first. Stereo Direct does not. So you can use this while you're monitoring, and you can generate a re-render that you deliver along the side separately with your ADM file. So check it out. A few things to mention about this. So in the trim and down mix window, you will note that in the down mix controls, there is no Stereo Direct listed here. That is because Stereo Direct is not a down mix. As I mentioned, it's a re-render format and a monitoring format. There are Stereo Direct trims that you can control here. So the important thing to note is that when you export an ADM, there is no metadata for downmix of how that Stereo Direct was prepared, but the trim metadata will be stored in the ADM. So again, when you're using Stereo Direct, you always want to export a separate stereo wave file using the re-renders there. The next feature I will show is the very exciting transport slider. When you hit play and you have a master file loaded, you can now jump around the timeline as you would in a variety of other player tools. So super cool for QCing your file. Previously, you had to type the timecode values into the counter there when you wanted to jump around. So it's a very handy tool. In preferences, I will mention that we have a new preference here for how the spacebar behaves in relation to that transport slider. You can either have the spacebar have it remain at the current position or the last start position. So that's super handy. One other preference that I'll mention here for Mac users only is you can now turn off the prevent display sleep. Previously, this was always on, and we would always prevent your screen from going to sleep when the render is open. Now on Mac, you can turn that off if you like. And one other setting, which you can find here under the View menu, which is show subframes for loaded master file. So if you turn that on, you can see subframes there in that duration counter. And if you turn it off, then you won't see that. Other things to mention here are some pretty big under the hood changes. So in the previous version of the renderer 5.2, we made some changes to the way that size metadata was rendered and also to loudness measurement. And what we heard from several customers over the past few months is that there was a few issues with that were unintended. The first one was when using size, some objects could experience comb filtering, and it was specifically noticeable on like a vocal signal panned in the center, and especially a signal without reverb, so a dry signal. you get some unwanted comb filtering effects when using size. So that wasn't great. Secondly, as a result of those changes, we added this all-pass filter that went across all beds and objects. And we knew that was going to change loudness, but the differences for true peak loudness were greater than we anticipated across a wide variety of content. So what we've done in this release is we've made a couple changes to kind of bring loudness measurement back very close to how it was in Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.1. And we've also resolved that potential comb filtering issue that I mentioned with size metadata. So the all-pass filter that goes across all beds and objects has been removed. And yeah, the biggest difference I think you'll notice is that your loudness measurement will be much more similar to how it was in Dolby Atmos Renderer version 5.1. So this is sort of an ecosystem-wide change. We are updating this across all of our tools, including the Album Assembler, and also rolling this out to our various DAW partners and encoding tools as well. To give you some more info on this change and how this is rolling out to the various other tools, we've produced a PDF, and I think Ben is going to flash a QR code on the screen so you can download that PDF and get a little bit more info about when that change is hitting your favorite DAW and some of the encoding tools that will be coming soon. A couple other small things to mention with this release. We resolved an issue with installation that could happen with the Dolby Atmos Renderer 5.2 when installing on some of the latest Mac OSs. Specifically, it would fail if you were trying to install the Dolby Audio Bridge. That has now been resolved. And then lastly, we've qualified the MTRX2 interface and the Thunderbolt option for that interface as well. So that's it for the renderer. And now let's switch over to the Album Assembler. So here we have Assembler version 1.4. And some things that you'll notice that are different in the UI is we now have our new edit modes, shuffle, snap, and slip modes. So these are very useful for moving clips and organizing your clips on the timeline, reordering songs. Snap mode is the legacy behavior of previous assembler releases. This allows you to freely move clips on the timeline, but you cannot create clip overlaps. So if you try and do something like that, it will snap back to the next available space on the timeline. Slip mode is similar. You can move clips freely, but you can also overlap clips, which essentially trims the clip underneath. And then lastly, we have shuffle mode, which allows you to reorder songs on the timeline and also preserve any spaces between clips. So if I take this clip and move it to the end, it's going to shuffle the other two over and preserve this space here. Note that on the stereo track, we have independent controls for the stereo track. We have shuffle and snap, but no slip mode on the stereo track. And that is because we assume that all of your stereo reference files are already the correct length. We don't support trimming on the stereo track either, so that's the reason for that. But they're independent controls, so you can be in snap on the stereo track and shuffle on the Atmos track. All of these have keyboard shortcuts, and you can hover over the buttons to see what the keyboard shortcuts are. They are 1, 2, and 3 for the Atmos track, and Shift 1 and Shift 2 for the controls on the stereo track. We also took the opportunity to move the stereo reference controls, the monitor toggle and the gain control, down closer to the stereo reference track, which makes a lot of sense. And just to remind you, while we're talking about keyboard shortcuts, there is a handy keyboard shortcut for toggling between the stereo reference monitor and the Atmos monitoring, and that is Shift S. So that's a good one to remember. By the way, I'll mention there is a keyboard shortcut PDF for both the assembler and the renderer located in the applications folder for each app, and that's a handy reference to remember all of the keyboard shortcuts that are possible for both applications. Other things to note for this assembler release, we're of course supporting Dolby Atmos Renderer 5.3, and in fact, you want to use both of those tools in tandem so that your loudness measurement in the assembler matches that of the renderer, and a few other reasons. We are also supporting the stereo direct trims that I mentioned in the renderer demo. So if you bring an ADM into the assembler that has stereo direct trims in it, those trims will be passed to the renderer for playback, and they will also be preserved if you round trip an ADM within the assembler. And last but not least, a small but powerful feature, you can now close a project in the assembler without quitting the application. So super handy to do that, and then it just opens a new project. So those are all the new features in the assembler and the renderer. We really hope you enjoy them, and I'll hand it back over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Jordan. So for current users of 5.2 and 1.3, where can they get the updates, or if a new user wants to obtain a new license?
Yeah, so these are free updates for existing users. They can be downloaded at customer.dolby.com. And then, of course, new users can either get a free 90-day trial of either app from the same place, customer.dolby.com, or you can purchase both apps on the Avid store.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan. Again, congrats to you and the team. Really amazing work. We're so happy to have these updates out in the wild. I did have one quick question, if I might. So going back on the new modes on the album assembler, specifically on the slip mode on the ADM portion, when you're dragging an ADM that's in focus, so that's the one that's highlighted pink, the one, whichever one that is you're dragging, that's the one that's in focus, meaning that if you go ahead and place it over another ADM, the ADM underneath is the one that gets trimmed. So the one that you're dragging is the one that remains in focus, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just wanted a little point of clarity, just in case. I'm sure we'll get a lot of questions on that one.
It's really just a shortcut for, what you could do before, which was trim a file and then go into this mode and then drag it. So it's just, It's a few less steps.
Awesome. Again, appreciate it, Jordan. Great updates.
Thank you.
All right, Greg, you've got part 2 of your pro tips for the album assembler. Of course, following up on our last session where you shared a bit of setup workflow and using markers, copy and paste, and some limiter functions. This month with version 1.4, you're getting into setting up a gapless album with fades, ADM analysis for loudness, and file relocation. So over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. And again, thank you to Jordan Glasgow. That was amazing. Super excited about these releases. So yes, thank you, Ben. Thank you for having me. Jake is here. Hello, Jake. Part 2 of some album assembler tips. So as Ben said, we covered a couple of things last time, making sure that you're running the album assembler with the renderer, markers and shortcuts, some copy and paste stuff, LFE, etc. So today what we're going to do very quickly, building a little bit upon what Jordan showed, we're going to talk through a couple of extra tips. So the first one we're going to talk through is basically creating a gapless album and using fades. So gapless albums now is even easier with the new shuffle, snap, and slip modes. So as you're importing your ADMs, you now have those 3 modes available to you to be able to quickly kind of assemble your album. Now, of course, right now we're in snap mode, so you can see I've got a couple of ADMs here, and in snap mode, it's going to do exactly that. So if you're wanting to create a gapless album, of course, when you import those ADMs, automatically it'll nudge up directly next to the previous ADM that's been loaded. So to create a gapless album, pretty easy. Now, of course, if you need to adjust that a little bit, again, you've got these modes that will help you kind of get through that. So we've got an album project here, or an album project in the works. We've got 3 ADMs. We've also got our stereo references there. So, of course, as you're kind of compiling your album, whether it's gapless or not, wanted to also quickly point out that you have the ability to fade your ADMs, either fade in or fade out. And it's really simple to do. Luckily, the way the team has built the album assembler, it's pretty much location based with your cursor. So we know that if you're in an ADM, if you go to kind of the middle section, the handle turns into trim. Now, if you go to either the top left or the top right of an ADM, you'll see that the cursor changes a little bit, and that is now going to be your fade option. And you can just go ahead and click and drag it. And as you drag it, one of the things you'll also notice is that right down here, it'll let you know your fade in and fade out. So obviously I don't have a fade in on this ADM, but I've got a fade out, and you can see exactly how long that is. And of course, we can always go back and adjust it as need be, right? So fading in, fading out, very simple, very intuitive, super easy. And what we're going to do now is I wanted to talk a little bit about being able to analyze those files. So there's some analysis, some loudness analysis that you can do here in the Album Assembler. There's also some that you can do in the renderer, but we're going to focus today specifically on the Album Assembler. So I've got this second cut here targeted, and you can see right down here at the bottom, I've got this loudness section, and I just an analyze loudness button. So I just go ahead and click that. And then we're going to actually have the Album Assembler go ahead and work its magic, and it's going to analyze that loudness. And then we're done. Now you'll see as we go back down into the loudness section here, we have integrated, level gated, integrated speech gated, speech percentage, a range, and our true peak. Now this also goes ahead and analyzes the binaural as well. So you can just click between Dolby Atmos and binaural and get your results. Now, it's a really great, quick and dirty tool if you want to kind of just get some reference as to what your loudness looks like. Again, there is a loudness analyzer in the Dolby Atmos Renderer as well that you can actually export a log. I'll cover that one in a later tips and tricks, but today we wanted to focus specifically on the Album Assembler. Now, the last thing I want to kind of show, or last tip, is creating an album, or importing files and moving things around. I know that some folks here, I'm not going to name anyone, I'm not going to call anybody out, but people love to sometimes just in the creative moment just have files everywhere. So as you can see right now, I've got a little portion of my desktop highlighted and showing you guys. I've got some ADMs and some stereo references, and then the album project DA3 file for this specific project just laying on my desktop. That is not specifically how I like to work, but again, in the creative moment, we do whatever we need to do. We grab stuff from wherever it is. Now, at some point, you're probably going to want to aggregate and compile everything into one nice, neat folder, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and grab all my ADMs and my stereo references along with the album project file, and I'm just going to go ahead and create a new folder. And let's go ahead and call this Greg's Dope Album Jams, with a Z, of course. And then I'm just going to go ahead and grab these files and throw them into this folder. Now, I'm going to go ahead and exit the Album Assembler. We'll go ahead and close it. Actually, I'm not going to go ahead and save anything. I'll just go ahead and close it. And now we're in 1.4, so I can actually close it without exiting the Album Assembler. Really awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and now open that album project again. So I'm going to go to File, Open Project, and now we know it's in this folder. I'm going to go ahead and click on that project file. So you'll notice that after I've now reopened the project, we get this window that's basically letting us know that we've got missing files, right? We know those files now exist in the Greg Dope Album Jams, with a Z, folder, and I can now relink those missing files. Now, very easy. I can go ahead and locate that folder, which we're already navigated there because I just opened the project from there. But if I want to go ahead and just find every single one of those files and automatically have them repopulate in the project, I can simply hit Search Folder. And there we go. You can see that all those files are now checked off. They're relinked. I click Done, and boom, it's going to go ahead and reopen my project, and all my files will be regenerated and available, boom, ready to go. And there we have it. Being able to use that just allows us to go ahead and have all of our files that are missing right back in our project, and we're good to go. So never fear. And always, of course, make sure you've got good session and project maintenance, and you're keeping everything nice and tidy in a folder. So with that, we've got some part 2 of our Album Assembler tips and tricks now closed. If you've not gone and grabbed your updates for the Dolby Atmos Renderer and the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler, make sure you do so. Again, thank you to all of you. Ben, thanks to you, and I'll toss it back to you.
Thanks to you, Greg. Greg, great stuff as always. And official file management, you know who you are that Greg's talking to there. So again, Greg, awesome as always, sharing how to put those crucial finishing touches and perfect your tracks and albums with the new version of the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler. I see a continuous Atmos DJ mix of Greg's jams with a Z in your future coming up shortly. Looking forward to that. So with that, we will jump into Q&A for Jordan and for Greg. Please add your name along with your question. All right, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for all of the fantastic questions that we got in the chat and all of the amazing pre-submitted questions. We're going to go run through those now, starting with one from David. This one's for you, Jordan. When will the new renderer be incorporated into DAW, specifically Nuendo?
Good question. We have published a PDF. There was a QR code a few minutes ago in the presentation where you can link to that. I don't have a specific date for Nuendo, but I know that they are working on it and should be coming soon.
Great, thank you. A question from Hanish. When exporting songs, I often get an error from labels that there's a time code mismatch. Sometimes my Dolby mix is ahead of the stereo master, and sometimes before. I'm requesting to learn the ideal way to overcome this solution. Hanish, thank you for that question. We'd like to get a little bit more info from you. So if you could please post this question on the user forum or email musicrelations@dolby.com. We'll be sure to address that for you and get an answer.
One quick thing, Ben, I wanted to ask Hanish, when you post that send that information over, please let us know what version of your album assembler, if you're using it, the renderer and DAW version as well, please.
Great, thank you, Greg. A question from Venkatesh. I want to learn more about Dolby, and that's it, is what he says. So hopefully you saw the beginning of the presentation, Venkatesh, and the links are there. Please check out learning.dolby.com, professional.dolby.com. All of the information that you need should be there at dolby.com/institute. There's the free Dolby Atmos Essentials course, the Music Accelerator, the tutorial videos. Our YouTube channel has tons of great interviews, demos, podcasts, our community sessions, and of course our pro site has the knowledge base and forum, quick start videos, and FAQs. So hopefully you'll find what you're looking for there. Question from Steven here for you, Jordan. Is this version more or less CPU intensive than the previous version, specifically for those still using a non-silicon Mac?
Version 5.3, the renderer, is probably about the same. There's a couple of small performance improvements, but compared to 5.2, it's roughly the same. If you are upgrading from 5.1, you'll definitely notice performance improvements from there, because we did add several in the renderer version 5.2.
Great, thank you. Question from Reinhold Greg. Is the new Dolby renderer also running on Mac OS 10.13.6 High Sierra?
So yeah, thanks, Reinhold. So the current version of the renderer, version 5.3, goes back as far as Mac OS Monterey, specifically version 12.7.5. High Sierra has not been tested.
Thank you, Greg. A question from Samuel. Jordan, for you, is it on the roadmap to upgrade the bed from 712 to 714?
It's not on the roadmap. We get this question sometimes. Atmos started in the cinema, and the 712 bed was an evolution from 7.1, where the .2 and the overheads were considered arrays to address the entire ceiling. If you want to have things that are moving around the ceiling or specifically in the back, objects are really the best way to handle that job. And now in several of the DAWs, you can create a 714 track, bus that is essentially a combination of the 712 bed plus two objects. So that's a good way to handle that.
Great, thank you. Shane asks, I am new to Dolby mastering and playing around with the iPhone version Dolby On. Any insights in general would be helpful. Shane, I can tell you that although Dolby On is not currently enabled for Dolby Atmos, it does use Dolby technology and is a great way to capture audio and video, such as an idea for a song or a jam or to do a live stream. And you can automatically apply EQ and compression and noise reduction, for example, stereo widening. So you can check out more at dolby.com/apps. And if you have any additional questions, go ahead and email us at musicrelations@dolby.com. Or excuse me, yeah. Sam asks, Greg and Jordan, has the Dolby Atmos renderer for cinema also been updated? And has the install of the Dolby Atmos renderer on Mac been fixed to work with OS Sonoma 14?
The installer has definitely been fixed. There was an issue previously whereby if you were installing the Dolby Audio Bridge, that would fail on some of the latest Mac OS updates due to one of their security updates. That has been fixed. The Cinema renderer has been updated with several of the updates, like the transport slider. I think this question might be specific to Stereo Direct, and that feature is not in the Cinema renderer. That is specific for the non-cinematic renderer.
Great, thank you. Greg, Sandra asks, do you have suggestions for hanging 4 overheads in a small room without putting holes in the ceiling or the wall?
So yeah, Sandra, thanks for sending your question over, and I saw that you also sent over your room dimensions and kind of what you're working with. So the good news is that obviously we make some recommendations around what the minimum size for room is, and so I'm going to share a few links here in the chat here in just a second. So I'll try not to do too many. But in terms of your room specifically, there are some considerations that can be made. There's some additional information that you're going to want to take into account, which I'm sure you're already doing that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of links here. So the first link I'm going to add is our entertainment music studio technical guidelines, which was just updated yesterday by our professional support team. And very quickly, I do want to call out, shout out to our professional team who monitors the forums and all of the questions that come in. If you do have questions, please do make sure you visit them there. They're always there. We do tend to monitor those as well and help out as much as we can. But as you have questions, please make sure. We just want to say thanks to that amazing team. So the first link I'm going to share is that document with the guidelines. So in that specific document, there are some considerations for smaller room sizes, what can be done in terms of speaker placement and what to consider. Along with that, in that document is the link to the Dolby Atmos room design tool, which was just updated a few days ago. So make sure you check that out. Make sure that you enter all of your information there, including you should be able to find your speakers, your monitors for what you're planning to do in the room. And that will also give you a really good idea of your tolerance and what you should be aiming for the size of your room. A couple of other things I'm going to add here. There is the documentation. This one is from a couple of years ago, but it's our best practices for a music room consideration. So I'll add that one here in the chat as well. And that is a downloadable PDF that you can grab. I also wanted to quickly call back to a couple of months ago. We had Gavin Haverstick of Haverstick Design, Room Designs, along with Emma Brooks. And there was a lot of discussion around smaller spaces, different size spaces, and how to some considerations and things you can think about. So I'm going to send a link to the YouTube playback for that community sessions as well. Again, sorry for the overload of links, but it's an excellent question. And this is something, again, when you think about room design, and especially when you look at our recommendations for the minimum spec for the room in terms of size, and then the minimum spec in terms of speakers, that being a 7.1.4. Do know that there are absolutely considerations for smaller room sizes. Now, again, there's going to be a tolerance. You can't be too small, but again, Sandra, looking at your specific dimensions, you're right at the cusp. So I'm sure you'll be able to find a good working solution.
Great, thank you, Greg. Jordan, for you, from Shauna, are there any changes to down mix settings and any changes to MP4 export? And apologies if I asked this twice because I completely lost you guys there for a second. And when it came back up, Greg was answering the question from Sandra still. So over to you, Jordan.
No, you didn't ask it twice. So no changes to down mix in the latest render release, and some minor updates to the MP4 export just to align with the new ecosystem changes, specifically loudness.
Great, thank you. Jordan, from Justin, with some material, it's tricky to get consistent TP loudness measurements between the 5.1 and binaural renders. Is this due to the nature of HRTF or something that's being worked on? And as a follow-up, are there differences in data bandwidth allocated to bed versus object tracks once encoded into the final file, for example, MP4 DD plus jock?
So yes, the loudness differences between the 5.1 render, which is what's used for the Dolby Atmos loudness, and the binaural is due to HRTF and room modeling. So that's expected in some cases. For the most part, you don't have to look at the binaural loudness. All of the music and podcast delivery specs are all looking for the Atmos loudness. So I would focus primarily on that. In terms of bit rates, no, when you encode to DD plus jock, it's a fixed number of core channels. So DD plus jock bitstream is 5.1 core channels plus metadata that helps the codec upmix to objects, typically 15.1. So it's a constant bit rate regardless of whether you're using many beds and a few objects or all objects. It doesn't matter. Do what works best for your workflow and what sounds best to you.
Great, thank you. We had a couple of comments in the Q&A about the links not being visible. We just republished them again to the entire group, so hopefully you can see them now. If you're not able to, please let us know.
Apologies for that.
No problem. Question, Greg, we'll start with you and then over to Jordan from Michael. What are the options for delivery to home theater regarding 714 mixes that are not down mixes for client review? Greg, and then Jordan, does the album assembler have restrictions for mixes with different settings such as mid, far, and so on, or object amounts between different mixes?
So yeah, on the first part, I think I might have misunderstood when I first read the questions that came in. So I'm going to actually answer it with a potential question maybe for Jordan. So in terms of home theater and the delivery for that, on the music side, typically what we would do is we would take the ADM and export an MP4 and then hand that over in many cases for client review. I know that the renderer has the ability to, again, you can export an MP4, you can actually attach video to that. So I'm assuming, I'm going to make a little bit of an assumption that that's probably the case, but I will actually, since I misunderstood the question a little bit, I didn't get the home theater part. Would that be correct, Jordan? Is that one of the typical client review ways for home theater delivery?
It can be, and you can also certainly generate a 714 re-render wave file if there is desire to send that as well.
And then on the second part, which was specifically for you, Jordan, which was the assembler 1.4, are there any restrictions for mixes with different settings?
No, there's not. So one of the cool things about the assembler is that it will switch the layout of the render in terms of binaural settings and object counts. If you're just using clips, ADMs, it will switch at the clip boundaries. If you're using song markers, it may be a little different in that if your song marker contains 2 ADMs or more than 1 ADM, the app will pick essentially a primary master file that it's using for those metadata settings like binaural and trim and down mix. And the primary is determined by the longest clip within the song. So The reason for that is typically you might have a song and then a little intro or outro skit at the beginning or end that's very short. And in that case, you would pretty much always want to use the binaural settings from the main song. So that's the way it works.
Great, thank you. Jordan from Ariel, why is it that you cannot use the album assembler with Pro Tools internal renderer?
The Pro Tools internal renderer, and similar to other DAWs that have internal rendering, is architected to receive, audio and metadata from the actual tracks within Pro Tools. It's not architected to receive metadata from an external app. So think of the album assembler kind of like a DAW in that regard, in that it's architected to send audio and metadata to the Dolby Atmos renderer.
Great, thank you. Question from Daniel. What is the actual fee to be in Dolby Atmos as a client and as a developer? Greg, you want to grab that one?
Sure. So as a client, as a user, first of all, if you're using a DAW such as Pro Tools, Studio Ultimate, Logic Pro, Persona Studio One, Cubase, Steinberg Cubase, and or Nuendo, you probably have you've got internal rendering already at your fingertips. If you're looking to actually leverage the tools separately, so the Dolby Atmos Renderer and or the Album Assembler, I'll provide links. And again, if I mess that up, hopefully somebody can help me put them in the right place. But you can actually, we do have 90-day trials available for the Dolby Atmos Renderer and the Dolby Atmos Album Assembler. If you actually, the links I'll post here, you can grab the trials there. There's information about both applications. And then if you wanted to purchase that, you can actually do that as well. So you can buy them purchase them on the Avid site. The cost for the renderer is $299. However, if you're on an older version of either DAPs or DAMs, you can actually update or upgrade to the current version for $99. And you can just kind of go through the store and find that. And there's also educational pricing for the renderer as well. The album assembler is $99. And again, there are 90-day trials available for both. So let me go ahead and post links to the chat here, and then hopefully we'll get them to you. You can always just search that on Google and get there as well. It's pretty easy.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, one other thing. Sorry, I didn't cover the developer piece. So there are obviously different kinds of developer. You could be a plugin developer, a DAW developer, some kind of application, standalone application developer. Depending on what you're looking to do, I would recommend to check Dolby.com. You can also email. Where's my note here? Sales support at Dolby.com. But again, we need some additional information in terms of what kind of developer you're seeking to be or that you are, so we can best help you. But you can try the Dolby site itself, or sales support at Dolby.com.
Great, thank you. Jordan, a couple for you. One from David. When will Windows have full support?
Yeah, right now we're primarily focused on working with partners who have great Windows support in their DAWs and standalone apps to kind of bridge the gap on the Windows side. So obviously DAWs like Pro Tools, Nuendo, Cubase, Studio One, Resolve. These are all great options. In terms of Windows support for things like the Album Assembler and the Music Panner plugin, these will probably not be happening in the near term, just due to our limited resources on what features we can develop and not. Also, the Dolby Audio Bridge has some things about it that are a bit of a challenge to pull off on Windows. So primarily focusing on partner tools for Windows at the moment.
Great, thank you. And Jordan from Omar, when will the 4 top speakers be available in Pro Tools?
I believe they demoed that at NAB a few months back. So don't have their exact roadmap, but I would expect that it's coming soon. Specifically, like 914 monitoring, I think, is what the question is.
Thank you. Greg, over to you from Alejandro, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but he's working with limited space. My space allows me to make a semi-equidistant layout, but it's limited by the height. What recommendations do you have there?
So yeah, thanks, Alejandro. So everything. So just a few questions ago, Sandra had asked about her kind of smaller space and being able to put some overheads in. Everything I said there is the exact same answer here. So the links, same thing, apply here. Specifically, making sure that you look at the Dart and check out those tolerances. When I mentioned Sandra's room earlier, I actually was in my mind was thinking about your room, Alejandro, where you're pretty much right on the cusp. You're pretty close. So everything that all the links that I posted previously, do make sure that you take a look at that. Make sure that you enter everything into the Dart. There's pretty much an easy way to be able to figure out what your tolerance levels are based on the speakers you're using, and certainly for the size of the room and the distance from your listening position. And then I just wanted to quickly go back to Sandra's question, because specifically she was asking about mounting those 4 overheads without making, hopefully not making holes in the ceiling. I don't know that that's going to be possible, but one of the things I forgot to mention is do make sure that you check with the speaker manufacturer. And there may be certain ways, some folks might, do some kind of internal trussing in a room. That is something that's possible, but there may be ways, but I wouldn't. I would check with the speaker manufacturer. I forgot to mention that for you, Sandra.
Great. Thank you, Greg. From Keavalia, I'm hopefully pronouncing that correctly. How can we convert a mix to binaural stereo even if we don't have Dolby, Greg?
So yeah, I mean, obviously having the Dolby tools, the Dolby Atmos tools in some way, shape, or form is ideal. So if you're using a DAW that has internal rendering, already there, you have the ability to do this. So there, a bin render will output a binaural 2-channel from an Atmos render. So if you're already leveraging the tools, whether in the DAW or you have the Dolby Atmos renderer, you're enabled already. You've got the capacity to do this without needing any additional tools.
Great, thanks. Let's roll through a couple of more. I'm just going to throw them out here. And folks, as you're entering your questions, please add your name. And we're not actually able to see your name in the app here. So Jordan, how about loop playback?
Loop playback in the assembler, definitely on the list, something that we would like to add. It would be very useful, I think.
Great, thanks. Another one for you on the renderer. Why is the screen in the cinema view small?
I don't know. I have to check on that one. Yeah, I can get back to Sam on that one.
Thank you, Sam. I'm still using 3.7.3. Can I use my Pro Tools Atmos template I'm using now with 3.7 with the 5.3 renderer? And then the second part to that, is there a tutorial video for the transition to 5.3?
Greg, do you know off the top of your head on that one?
Oh, I think we may have lost Greg. There's transition video for 5.2, I believe. Greg, we lost you for a second.
Yeah. What was it? Was there a question for me? Sorry.
The question is, I'm still in 3.7.3. Can I use my Pro Tools Atmos template I'm using now with 3.7 with the 5.3 renderer?
3.7 of
3.7.3 of the renderer.
And they want to know if they can use their
current template with the 5.3 version.
It should be fine. I mean, they're in terms of how things are routed. That's still basically the same. So yeah, they should be able to. One thing I would recommend, if they're coming from 3.7, 3.7.3, back up your settings. Do a global settings export. Although installing 5.0 or up to 5.3. Most of that should automatically repopulate, but you want to make sure you have that just in case. But you should still be able to use your Pro Tools template.
Great, thank you. Question is, are there any webinars about mastering in the Dolby Renderer? We have done quite a few community sessions on mastering with Georgetown Masters and Access Audio and several other folks. So check out our community sessions page or our Pro Tools page, or excuse me, our YouTube channel for that as well. Just blasting through a couple more of these. Kind of a general best practices question here. Is there a rule advantage, disadvantage to bass managing surrounds and heights?
Depends on the room. You know, bass management. Am I on, by the way?
Yes, you are. I know you're dealing with some weather issues down there.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's we're in I'm in a flood zone, literally going on, and it's crazy outside. Yeah. So in terms of bass management, again, going back to some of the links I sent previously, bass management is one of the things that's covered. It really does depend on the room and what's needed in terms of making sure that great translation is going to be present. Once the work you're doing in that room goes out of the room. So that's there's no one hard set answer. It really depends on what your speakers are, the size of your room, the materials in the room, all things that need to be considered in terms of what happens in terms of bass management.
Okay, great, thank you. Jordan, throw this one to you. Does the new renderer change anything with MP4 output for QC?
No, just as I mentioned a few minutes ago, just some minor changes to align with loudness with the new ecosystem updates, but otherwise the same.
All right, great, thank you. Got a shout out to Jake the dog here, Greg. So thank you for that. Jordan, is it possible to purchase a perpetual version of the media encoder?
I believe it's an annual subscription only. Yeah. We got to get Jake trained up to answer some of these hard questions.
I know. Working on it.
Jake's always our special guest. What is the latest renderer version that can be used with High Sierra? Sorry to stump at you.
Have to go back and check. I honestly don't know off the top of my head, but it might be 373. I'll go back to the 5.0 release notes here as we're talking.
Okay, great. Just taking a look through. From McKay, what's up, McKay? Is there any plan to include true HD file exports into the renderer at some point? This would be great for client-side references, among other uses for indie distribution for home theaters, for example.
No immediate plans, but definitely open to consideration. McKay, maybe I'll ping you offline on get more info on that one.
Great, thanks. A couple more here and then we'll wrap up. What is the recommended monitoring for binaural content that will demonstrate convincing positioning for rear and height content?
That gets to, sorry, yeah, I think I was about to cut Jordan off. I was going to say that that gets a little subjective. Most folks are going to use headphones to kind of monitor that, and they're going to use the headphones that they're most used to, because that's what translates best for them. That's what they know. But I don't know, Jordan, if you had something different.
No, you definitely use the headphones that you would normally use and that you're comfortable with. I would definitely encourage folks to check out the beta of our PHRTF personalized rendering app, which allows you to scan your head and create your own custom HRTF using that rather than the default one that's in the renderer. For many users, you'll find that you'll get better translation and more natural experience when mixing binaurally. So check that out if you haven't already.
Great, thank you. And the last one here, Jordan, are there any plans to include insert plugins in the renderer like metering?
No immediate plans for that. mean, obviously we do have loudness measurement built into the renderer natively. And something that we hope to work with the DAW partners on is to get, official kind of Dolby loudness measurement natively in the DAWs, so that, today you can get really close with loudness measurement using a third-party plugin in a DAW with our 5.1 renderer. But if we can get that spot on so that the loudness is exact in the DAWs is what we're shooting for.
Great, thank you. And with that, we will wrap this session. Thank you so much to Jordan Glasgow, Greg Chin for these great presentations and answering all of these questions. Thank you to all of our viewers for all of these amazing questions. You can always email musicrelations@dolby.com with any other thoughts, suggestions, questions, love letters, hate mail, etc. With that, we will wrap this session. Thank you all so much for attending, and we'll see you next time.